And so we acknowledge that. But then it centered those who had been marginalized by privileging their unique ways of knowing the world and based on their lived experience. So we flipped that script, right? And a second element is that of human rights, based on this large body of universally accepted laws upheld by the United Nations, but not easily protected by them, which asserts the inherent rights of individuals to make personal decisions about their lives and the obligations of government to ensure the conditions for them to actually ensure and implement the decisions that they make. There are 8 categories of human rights that have also evolved over time through various documents, and there are several of which I hope you've talked about earlier or elsewhere that do not, that have not been ratified or adopted by the United States, namely regarding women and children. So, and the one on children is really offensive to me because it has to do with punishment. The U.S. hasn't ratified it because they don't want to have to agree not to punish children as adults in ways that adults are punished. That's us, okay. So I could spend a whole semester talking about these things alone, but I won't. But again, all of these things are encompassed in, and usually in the United States we think of civil rights, not human rights. We think of human rights as things that get violated elsewhere. So there are people in the reproductive justice movement who have testified in Geneva on human rights abuses. We had a tribunal here in New York a year ago, and at the United Nations and in Brooklyn through Black Women's Blueprint. I'm currently on their board, which is basically talking about violence against women as a human rights violation, and particularly Black women, historically up to present times. But it's not just about whether Black women are more violated, through domestic violence or other forms of sexual violence. It's about also what are the consequences for those who cause them harm. So we also talk about those crimes within communities against women of color. So it's our menfolk. And we also talk about alternative models to intervening, that they don't have to be punishment-based. Beth Ritchie, who was my colleague at CUNY many years ago and now is in Chicago, really identified how we, called Arrested Nation. She spent her career talking about violence against women, and yet we tend to think the thing is to call the police and lock them up, as if that's the solution, as opposed to alternative methods that communities can create for bringing the harm doers into accountability and restorative justice and other approaches to dealing with those situations. The third element is that of self-help, or what I also refer to as community care. Because when we say self-help, it sounds like you have to help yourself to get better and to heal, and I think that should ideally happen within a community of care. But Sister Song and the reproductive justice movement has always incorporated self-help and this type of care into the work, into the movement, because movements before, as was mentioned by Amy, that a lot of times within movements there's been harm, to women and to others, and even between women, right? So the self-help is supposed to help us at least work very diligently not to do that, and that a lot of that hurt people comes from the community trauma that people internalize and then visit on people who look like them rather than directed towards the systems that have oppressed them. So we do this through revealing of stories and the various human rights violations we've experienced and these acts of humiliation and violence and exclusion, and we validate people and through their self-disclosure help them to feel restored. And it's very vital to the practice of reproductive justice. It gets incorporated into our convenings and our organizations, and sometimes we do it better than others, but it's a commitment to do so. The specific strategies in some are to focus on addressing the intersecting systems of oppressions, and this too was an answer to the question earlier, that we do not live single issue lives, so we cannot have single issue struggle, because healthcare is tied to so many other things that people also have that are impacting them, and you can't segregate that at any given time to say that this is the only thing you're focused on, unless you have more privilege to do so. So it's about being really clear that we work on a multitude of issues and, you know, simultaneously to lift that up. And I'm going to get to know why that sometimes is a challenge within the movement. We analyze and work to change unjust systems of power. We document, we produce data, and speak to these systems of power about these inequities that we face. When necessary, we take direct action. We were in front of Governor Cuomo's New York office, getting him to pass a second bill around the shackling of pregnant women who are incarcerated in New York State. There was one passed in 2009 to protect them. That wasn't widely enforced, so we had to do it again. And we still have to monitor to ensure that this doesn't happen. I'm talking about women being chained to their beds while in labor, being forced to wear heavy chains around their pregnant bellies during transport, not having privacy during labor and birth. That in, again, this progressive liberal state of New York. And there's shackling elsewhere, but I think it's particularly egregious here because many people aren't aware of it. And he did sign the legislation that got passed, but again, it's the ongoing monitoring. Supporting women of color, indigenous community leadership. And these are all the ways that this can happen. Making sure if you're in a position to do so that they have sustainable long-term funding. Whenever there's a major, and this is no detraction from the important work of Planned Parenthood, but it's real easy to send them a check, but how many people know about the women of color-led organizations who've led this fight, and their survival depends on your check, much more so than a Planned Parenthood, which is probably going to be, in fact, probably got some more funding as a result of the vicious attacks against it, right? I've been talking about from private donors and things like that. To consult with people, to provide capacity building, to share resources, to share credit. I wanted to share this example of when someone asked about the co-optation earlier. Co-optation often happens. Reproductive justice gets shared as, gets described a lot of ways to describe what people are doing in the work that many of us wouldn't consider reproductive justice, but they put the label on it and they say they're doing reproductive justice work, but they don't have the analysis behind it. And a couple years ago, there was an article in the New York Times talking about the changing shift of the reproductive health movement or the pro-choice movement, and that it was becoming all these new things, and more intersectional and all that. And the people quoted in the article were all the mainstream white women-led organizations, and nowhere did they mention that women of color had anything to do with that. So there was a calling out by the executive director of Sister Song that didn't get published in the New York Times, got published in a reproductive justice paper. And then there was a meeting because we were having a gathering of Sister Song, and at least the head of Planned Parenthood, Cecil Richards, came, and they had a dialogue. So they worked it out to some extent. They at least had a dialogue about it, and I think that's important. So that was, you can have calling out, then you can have calling in, but still, it's a bigger issue than that because this is, the effects of that and the erasure, if you will, of women of color is still pretty significant. It's significant as a whole, and it's significant within the organization itself. And not just them, but a lot of mainstream organizations who have more resources and can reach people, and they're really important. But is the analysis coming, squarely from reproductive? And I think it's getting better, but it gets complicated. And build and sustain a base. We need to listen, engage, and mobilize communities most effective. This was at the 2004 March. Create opportunities for new leaders to emerge. Coalition build across issues as much as possible. And engage in electoral politics. This was Monica Simpson speaking to the Democratic Convention Platform Committee last summer to tell what we need to do. That we needed to repeal Hyde and really make a lot of things more accessible. And sometimes we need to support and even run ourselves for office. So the idea of bringing the, talk to electeds, address them, but sometimes we also need to be the electeds and just get people who have a clear reproductive justice agenda in place. Center the most marginalized, I think we've made that pretty clear by listening, by learning from them, by leveraging resources on their behalf, and by localizing the efforts. We focus so much on what goes on in Washington, but so much of the work has to happen locally. Because even when we have things in place in Washington, they don't trickle down so well, and we have to be really engaged where it's really happening to people. So when we have